Sam Reinhart discusses a possible extension. And on today's show, we are going to discuss the Florida Panthers front office rankings. Where do they rank? And do we agree with the rankings?
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, September 8th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get their daily Florida Panthers fix. So, Cats fans, even though there isn't hockey just yet, we had a little bit of a glimpse of the fun. If you happen to be a baseball fan and a hockey fan, Wednesday night was such a great night as it was Florida Panthers night. Sam Reinhart, Spencer Knight, and Anton Lindell attend the game, and the Marlins scored 10 runs, and we hear "We Want 10" chants all throughout the crowd at a baseball game, something that we're used to, especially in the last 2 years with the Florida Panthers, and it's translated into baseball. It's crazy to think that what happens, and crazy to think that Stanley C. Panther and Victory E. Rat participated in the race as well. But without further ado, it is a Friday, which means it is a Fairbanks Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Nick Fairbanks is back here on the show. Nick, welcome back to the show. And I want to get your thoughts on the "We Want 10" chants going from hockey to baseball.
So you kind of stole the words out of my mouth. I was actually going to start off the show by saying, we want 10, but I think it's an amazing development as far as what South Florida sports are starting to merge, culturally together. You see, Bruce Koepka coming in, helping out the Panthers, cheering for them. And then, you have the Panthers and the Heat that are always kind of going back and forth with each other, showing each other love. You had the Miami Dolphins that'll be starting this Sunday. I wonder what they're going to do. But having the Marlins, who are still in the thick of things, having that partnership with the Panthers and being able to provide a moment like that, especially on Panthers night, it's unreal.
No doubt. And the Marlins and the Panthers will always be intertwined because of the fact that they did come in the same year. So they're kind of like brothers, cousins, you name it when it comes to being in lockstep when it comes to their existence and coming into this community together. And once again, the Florida Panthers will be celebrating their 30th anniversary this year, and we're seeing a little bit of it with the Marlins. But Sam Reinhart did throw out the first pitch as well. Even though he's a right-handed shot, he does throw the baseball left-handed. We did see it in that clip that Jameson Olive posted online of Sam Reinhart. And also Sam Reinhart also got a chance to talk about the getting ready for 2023, 2024. Here's a little bit of what he had to say. Quote, "Guys are refreshed and ready to come back. We have such a close team as it is. When you live in South Florida, you can't really complain about coming back here." Close quote. And then was asked about a possible contract extension and says, quote, "Billy is giving me the longest deal I've had in this league. It's nothing new. It's not something I stress over. They know I want to be here, and I know they want me to be here. We got no problem kind of waiting it out," close quote. And that kind of, the last part of it kind of reminds me of, remember when the Florida Panthers traded for Sam Reinhart to begin with, and the RFA status was there for months and months, and the whole waiting it out kind of reminds me of going back to that point when we were wondering when is an extension going to be announced, and every report was saying that they are in good standing for the guy that they just traded for. Though he is going into his last year, shooting percentage was down by 4%, but Nick, he took 39 more shots than his next highest, a career high last season for Sam Reinhart, 227 shots to be exact, and second highest time on ice in his career as well. So, but also when it comes to an extension for Sam Reinhart as well, not that I'm opposed to it, but number one, got to see where the cap is. Number two, just like how the Panthers made a cap clearing trade for Anthony Duclair, chances are one might have to happen as well if you do extend Sam Reinhart. And we did speak about a few weeks ago with Jacob Winans about keeping one of Montour or Forsling, not both. Chances are you're only going to keep one. So a Sam Reinhart extension makes that a little difficult as well. But it's also about if you were to make a cap clearing trade like a Sam Bennett as well to keep a Sam Reinhart, we've spoken about the confidence as well in Anton Lundell, uh, the confidence in him being the 2C, but also maybe even Etulis Turenin as well being a part of that top six. I know I threw a lot at you just now, Nick, but what are your thoughts on what Sam Reinhart had to say on Wednesday night?
I'm kind of in his, camp. We're not worried. I mean, I don't think he said anything out of the norm or anything that would be too terrifying. Both sides I think are just willing to wait it out or just trying to find either the right term or the right dollar amount. I don't have any suspicion, that he's going to be moved unless it becomes, he wants $8 million, $9 million. I don't see him as that type of player. And if he is, then I'm pretty sure the Panthers can get a pretty good haul for him back. But it just goes to show that Zito is committed to the players that he's been able to acquire and treat, as actual like family of this organization. So I can't think of somebody better, representative of what Zito's trying to do as far as contract wise, because, as you said, Bill gave him his longest contract in the league so far. He doesn't have any feeling that that's not going to happen again. So if I were Zito, and I know we'll kind of go over this later in the show, but I would probably go 6 years with Reinhart. I'm not sure the actual dollar amount right now because I think Reinhart's kind of waiting out for a little bit more, and Bill's probably not going to overpay. But last thing I'll bring up too is, you talked about possible cap space situations and cap dumps and everything. We have to still wonder about Bobrovsky and, what's going to happen with his contract. Can Florida offload it? What will they have to give up to maybe give up half of the contract? Because that, in a way, will still help Florida. I think it could help fit Reinhart back on this roster. Meanwhile, keeping Bennett, keeping a Forsling and or Montour. I don't like the fact that, we may have to only keep one of them. I'd love to keep both of them, but at the end of the day, this is a business, and maybe we have somebody in the wings that's waiting to take over, and, maybe it'll be better for the Panthers in the future.
Yeah, no doubt. And let's also recognize that Sam Reinhart also had some Selke votes. I know it wasn't very high. It was 25th, but I also went out to look at some of the his numbers in the postseason as far as 5-on-5, and mostly played with the third line. And when you make a Stanley Cup final, you got to have a strong top nine, especially. And third line playing 135 minutes and 25 seconds at 5-on-5, a +2 goal differential. And this was an incredible one. The line of Reinhart, Barkov, and Lundell only played 6 minutes and 36 seconds together. This is via natural stat trick. 2 goals to the opposition 0 in that short amount of time. So it just goes to show how lethal he not only Reinhart but all three of those can be when put together as well. And really the flexibility is really what is so crucial for Sam Reinhart. You can put him on the top line, you could put him on the third line, you could put him anywhere on those top 3 right wing spots as well. And I think that's really what the Panthers have been blessed with these last couple of years, that whenever going back all the way to Joel Quenneville, even last year, you've had and Andrew Burnett and all that, you haven't had to worry about Sam Reinhart. You know that you could put him anywhere. That's the thing with Sam Reinhart that has been beneficial for this team. And
you can say that about almost every player in the top 9. I mean, besides, a Barkov, he's always going to be your 1C and everything, or Verhage, who's always going to be in the top 6. But every single one of those players in the top 9 could slot down or slot up, just depending on what the team needs or even how they're playing it, unfortunately. I think Reinhart was a benefactor when Marchment was here. Just a big body, dangly body, able to open things up and really draw a lot of attention to himself, leaving Lundell and Reinhart by themselves. So I think that's partially probably why his shooting percentage was lower this season. Didn't really have a lot of that space, but he still put up a lot of big goals this season. And, he's a very important piece to the power play, whether he's able to tip pucks or he's got that little set play with Tkachuk just to get that one-timer in. I'm expecting big things from him this season, just because I think, with the expectations going in and what Florida needs to do in the first 2 months with the injuries that they have, the offense is going to need to show up and really provide that boost for the team.
Yeah, and 32 power play goals in the last 2 years, a franchise record for this team. You definitely, it's definitely something of value, and that's what really what Sam Reinhart brings to the table, especially. And we're going to transition over to segment number 2. Where we're going to discuss front office confidence rankings. Where do the Florida Panthers rank? We're going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about FanDuel. And football season is about to kick off. Actually, by the time you guys listen to this, it has already kicked off. We don't know the result yet of Lions Chiefs. Last time I checked, it was 7-7. But FanDuel is giving you a chance to win all season long, because right now you can bet on a Super Bowl winner. You can get bonus bets on every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. You can use your bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Segment number 2 here on this Friday, September 8th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So, the Athletic put out an article of front office confidence rankings, and we are going to put our screen share here for the audience on the YouTube page and discuss front office confidence rankings for the Florida Panthers. And Nick, there was it's crazy. I looked at the whole list, and there's a few jumps. There's a few drops as well there. Detroit dropped big time. Looks like that fans are looking to be a little impatient with the Iser plan. LA dropped as well. When you lose 2 straight to Edmonton, you just throw your hands up. It's like, what can you do? Ottawa, GM's on the hot seat. Anaheim as well. And Toronto is a big one that dropped 18th to 27th. Calgary, after the trade for Huberdeau and the drop in points. But New Jersey rose. Dallas rose as well, expected to possibly be the Western Conference champion. Vegas rose from 31 to 6th. Pittsburgh, after hiring Dubas, 20th to 10th. Chicago, after drafting Bedard, 30th to 15th. And Philadelphia, actually embracing a rebuild, 32nd to 24th. But the Panthers, with the Panthers, though, they stayed the exact same. 7th last year, 7th this year. And these are the categories that go into front office confidence rankings. They are roster building, cap management, draft and develop, trading, free agency, vision, and those are the categories. So roster building, B+ for the public, fan base gives it an A. Cap management, B, fan base gives it a B+. Draft and develop, C+ on both categories. Trading, A+ for public, A for fan base. Free agency, B+ for the public, A for the fan base. Vision, B+ for the public, and A- for the fan base. And the one that sticks kind of out to me in kind of a, not necessarily a raising of the eyebrow, but I just shrug my shoulders when I see this, is mostly the draft and develop part of this.
Yep.
Because Bill Zito's he's only had 2 first-round picks during his time as GM for the Florida Panthers. Anton Lundell, Mackie Samoskevich. Most of the time during his time, he has been going for it. trading away those picks, trying to contend. Hey, it's got him a President's Trophy. It's got him a trip to the Stanley Cup Final as well. But another one is free agency. Fan base gives it an A, and we've spoken about all summer about working with the little bits that you have with the pool, with the money pool as well. That one's another one that sticks out to me, which the fan base gives an A. What's one that sticks out to you, Nick?
Definitely draft and development. And I don't think this is necessarily Zito's fault. I mean, he drafted Lundell, so he's already got an A in my book. But as the franchise goes, and since the Talon days, I'm probably going to have to give the organization or the front office maybe a D, just because you can't honestly name players over the last maybe 10, 15 years, probably over maybe 5 or 10, that actually developed within our system and actually played for the Florida Panthers. I think that's an issue, and I hope that it's something that he's thinking about, because as we talked in the last segment, we have to talk about the cap, and we have to talk about what's going to happen going forward with the players that are currently on this team. So I would actually give him an A for cap management, just because he's been able to either work deals or get space that he's needed in order to fulfill the roster and keep things together. I mean, if you were to pick the teams between the President's Trophy winning team and the Stanley Cup finalist team, both teams loved each other. They loved playing with each other. Mm-hmm. But there was just something about the Stanley Cup contending team that really brought things into light, because it wasn't the same team coming back. You had a new coach. You had some older guys coming in off of PTOs, and you didn't know what you're really going to get. Whereas the other team, they had been together for a while. So going on a run like that and having those expectations or lack of expectations, I think it kind of lowers down exactly what their cap management was at that time. But with the fan base and roster building as well, because I'm kind of moving up from there, I agree. He's put this team together and gotten the pieces necessary to make this team, maybe a top 5 or top 10 franchise in the league right now. I mean, he got Carter Verhaeghe. He was able to go get Matthew Tkachuk and, and Forsling. I mean, there's a bunch of players that are on this team right now because of Bill Zito and the front office that he has available to him. So while I think some grades could be higher or some could be lower, like the draft and develop, I think the fan base and the public actually did a pretty good job at, evaluating what Bill Zito and the front office has been able to do.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. Trading, I might have actually a little lower. Actually, you see A+ for the public, A for fan base, and you think about what happened the previous season with falling flat on their face in round 2 against Tampa, and then you give up all that draft capital to get a Ben Sherratt and a Claude Giroux. And yes, when you're going for it and you have all the confidence in the world when loading up, I mean, ask the Boston Bruins this year, ask the New York Rangers as well. Those are other teams that have it, and it just goes to show that it doesn't always work out in that way as well. So it's not necessarily that I would give Bill Zito a bad grade in this, but I would have it maybe a little lower, maybe somewhere like an A- or B+ as far as trading, because it's something that could bite them in the butt later on. But I mean, making it in the very next year when you don't make any trades at the deadline, but also that could contribute to the trading part.
Yes.
Like we talked about, sometimes the best trade is the trade that you don't make. So some his ability to make up for things as well. Maybe that's why his grade is where it's at an A.
Yeah, and you got to think of the positives or the what ifs or what if nots. The fact that he didn't make a trade during the trade deadline, I think, spoke volumes and really cemented this team and what they were going to be able to do going into the playoffs. So hats off to him and the front office for actually sticking to their guns to do that. But even before in that summer, having the guts to go get Matthew Tkachuk, who's changed his franchise. I mean, just completely has changed his franchise's outlook. And, you give up a fan favorite in Huberdeau and, a really steady top 6 defenseman in Mackenzie Weegar. That takes a lot of what to pull off. But, can we talk about the Sherratt trade? Yeah. it's something that I think the team definitely needed. They needed somebody who was a little bit bigger and a little bit hard nosed, but unfortunately didn't work out. I thought Claude Giroux actually worked out pretty well. I think he's
Same.
towards, I guess the second round. I mean, he was the one that assisted on Verhaeghe's goal in the first round, but I think he put up, some big points and played very well with the Panthers. So I don't really blame him for that trade, but you're judged on your winners, not so much your losers. And I think Bill has won more, whether trading or not trading, than he has lost.
Yeah, Ben Schrott also had the secondary assist on Carter Verhaeghe's game winner against Washington. So yeah, so both the trade deadline acquisitions did in that instance. And for those listening on the audio version of the podcast, head over to our YouTube channel where you could see the grades for the Florida Panthers front office confidence level as well. So, and this also is another reason to subscribe to the channel because we will be doing some more screen shares here on future episodes here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But in segment number 3, we're going to have a little bit of fun going from this front office confidence rankings now to be a little bit more descriptive with Bill Zito and the era of Florida Panthers hockey over these last 3 seasons. We're going to discuss that more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Third and final segment on this Friday, September 8th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. So, Nick, as I was doing my show prep, doing it in the middle of my day job in the break room, sometimes there's a random show on television, and one of those shows today in the break room was Family Feud. And I was just going over what to talk about tonight and thinking, how can I relate this to the Florida Panthers? And with the surveys that go on, they ask a group of 100 people to describe something. And then, of course, the participants of Family Feud. It would be a lot to play the actual game here. So we're going to do a little bit of we're going to do the survey part of it, of asking people to fill out a survey when it comes to not an actual survey, but speaking out of it. And and I tweeted this out on X asking if you were to fill out a survey for Family Feud and you were asked, describe the Bill Zito era in a few words, what would they be? And I'll go first on this one. Successful, hopeful, and sustainable. What says you, Nick?
First one I would use is intelligent. Second one I would say is sustainability. And the third one, you might get me on right now, but I would say powerful.
Want to explain that one?
I don't
think anywhere.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't think that Florida's necessarily had a GM that's willing to pull the trigger on a trade to definitely change the franchise, or at least get it approved by ownership and at least convince them to do that. Because I mean, you could read about the Luongo trade rumors back in the early 2000s and what they were trying to get for him, and that they had a deal in place for him, but ownership didn't want to take it on. But I think the fact is that he's got the savvy, he's got the business sense. I mean, he used to be a player's agent and everything. He understands the business, so that's why I say intelligent. But the fact is that he's using that knowledge to the organization's benefit. I think it's a powerful thing, and then it's also kind of cascading to everybody in the organization right now. You can definitely see that everybody's in lockstep, and it's just a powerful thing to see that. I don't think this organization's had ever. So that's why I say powerful.
And I actually really didn't think about it in that way when it came to powerful because you, we don't one person we actually don't mention on this show often is owner Vinny Viola. We actually don't say his name too much, but every single time he's gone on camera, he's just spoken about the commitment to winning and just wanting to do so badly as well,
Hmm.
and just putting hockey people in the right situation, not overstepping when it comes to making certain moves. It's like, hey, Bill, I trust you. Matthew Caldwell, I trust you as well to for all the community relations stuff as well, building the war memorial as well, and just putting
Hmm.
the right people in place as well. And the whole it starts up top. Kind of a cliche saying, but really when you get that vote of confidence from ownership, it's definitely helpful for sure. But Nick, we posted this on and we got quite a few replies from X and Instagram, and the one of them was actually from national anthem singer John Acosta, who
What's up, John?
who, funny enough, I'm in a fantasy football league with him with
Ooh.
Kirby Loopball, David Rodriguez, and by the way, I had the opportunity to bench Travis Kelsey right before kickoff tonight. Whew, so I
Good man.
literally like 25 minutes before. So this is what John Acosta said: poised, sincere, intense. And he went to go on and say all three based on a couple of interactions walking down the halls at the arena. I will say though, he took the time to say a few words to my son before a game one time, and for that I'll always have an appreciation for him. So that's great. And we've seen the interviews of how animated he is. And like I've said multiple times, even seeing him in a press box at Emily Arena when the Panthers would play the Lightning on the road, the front office would be is actually near where the media members would be, unlike at FLA Live Arena where they're at the Emirate Vault. Um,
Hmm.
other replies are calculated by Matthew Goldberg. Jamie Ween says goat. uh, Stephen Wolf says smart, lucky, on point. I could get the lucky part.
Yeah.
Get in as an ace seed, and you know, roll with what you got, and hey, caught lightning in a bottle. JD says over aggressive, smart, controversial. I wish he kind of explained the controversial part of that. I'm not going to try to
Comment.
put
Comment on
words
the
in his
video.
mouth. Yep. I hope he comments on the video or sends another tweet explaining what the controversial part of it, and maybe we'll revisit that. And on Instagram, Alex says truly amazing. He's helped us a lot. So a lot of positives when it comes to words, when it comes to what Bill Zito has done in his time. And like we said, the vote of confidence from ownership, Matthew Caldwell is as well, and just something that you know. And here's the thing, Nick. Before opening night, I had the opportunity to talk to Bill Zito, and when talking about the lack of draft capital is like, how do you assess whether to pull the trigger? And he's talking
Hmm.
about, and the one thing that stood out to me is like, am I able to replace what I put out when it comes to putting in a trade? Is the ROI the
Hmm.
return on investment going to be worth it as well? And those are kind of a little bit of going into the brain of a general manager as well that kind of stood out to me, and great conversation that I personally had with Bill Zito in a media availability. Right, that was right before opening night against the Philadelphia Flyers last year, and that was at the point where Aaron Ekblad was going on LTIR. Oh, where we were wondering, is the season going to be in is it going to be going in a bad direction as well?
Hmm.
And just that interaction in itself kind of tells me the amount of how they play out scenarios when it comes to all types of transactions.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have that risk assessment kind of built into your decision making, right? Like, what's going to help the organization more? A first round draft pick that may or may not pan out, or somebody right now who can make a difference and actually push us over the ledge that we're trying to get to. And that's when when he went for it during the President's winning trophy season. You understand that. You have the team. They're running on all cylinders, but you also need guys that have kind of been there and can kind of guide you the way. And no problem with that. I was going to ask, and because I'll get back to my point here, who's the one that said calculated?
It was Matthew Goldberg, I
Okay.
believe. Yeah.
For whatever reason, I think about what is that video game that's out there right now? I used to play it a ton. Rocket League.
Oh, Rocket League.
Just calculated, like. So that's kind of what I thought about when he said that. So I hope that's the reference he was going for. But I think all the adjectives and anything that we can throw positively at Bill Zito and what he's been able to do, it's warranted. I mean, I have yet to see anything that's catastrophic that's been done to this organization and that has really set them back. As he said, what's the return on investment? And I think he's gotten more return than what he's been able to put out. So definitely a good way to look at things.
No doubt. And as we get to the light at the end of the tunnel with getting closer to 2026 and having a first round pick again for this team, interested to see how trade deadlines and even offseason moves are going to look like for Bill Zito, or they could just continue to be kind of like the LA Rams and just say F them picks for sure. Who knows? Hey, but you're trying to win a cup, right? And you have this window for this team. But Nick, I want to thank you so much once again for joining me on this Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Another fun episode recorded with you. Tell everybody where they can follow you, my friend.
Armando, thanks for having me on again. I know I say that every time I'm on here, but I am truly grateful that you bring me on every week and for keeping it fresh. I was going to ask you, which Family Feud host were you watching today?
I was watching Steve Harvey.
Of course, he's the GOAT. But anyways, you guys can follow me on X at Prudentious0 and also on Threads at Bure1096.
Awesome, Nick. Thank you so much, and see you next Friday, my friend.
See you next Friday.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Steer Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And every dayers, make sure you come back next week as we will be 1 week closer to training camp. We're likely going to have one more divisional crossover right before training camp is set to open. Prospect showcase is coming up very, very soon. So you don't want to miss next week's episodes of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. So I'm Armando Velez with Nick Fairbanks. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.